If you enjoy this video, please remember to subscribe if you haven't already. And if you like what you see on my channel and would like to support me on Patreon, click on the link below. In 1969, MGM Studios expressed major interest in the science fiction novel Logan's Run, which was published in 1967 and written by authors William F. Nolan and George Clayton Johnson. The story was set in a dystopian future in the year 2116, where the population are balanced out on a day called Last Day, when people willingly go to be put to death on their 21st birthday. The ritual is performed at a place called the Sleep Shop, when they are given a lethal, pleasure-induced toxic gas. The way which a person's age is revealed is by a crystal embedded in the palm of their right hand, which changes colour every 7 years. By age 20, the palm crystal blinks red, then black on the last day, when they turn 21. However, there are many people who want to escape the last day ritual and are called runners. Because of this, there are a group called deep sleep operatives, often called Sandmen. They are hired to terminate runners. The main character is Logan 3, a Sandman, but when his palm crystal is flashing and it's his turn to face Last Day, he becomes a runner. MGM was interested in adapting the novel into a screenplay for a major motion picture in 1969. MGM was planning to approach Robert Redford to play the lead. Initially, beloved producer and director George Powell, who had worked on many science fiction films including War of the Worlds and The Time Machine, got the rights to Logan's Run, but the project would fall into development hell due to Powell clashing with writer Richard Mabum over what the film's story should be, including the possibility of bringing real-life issues and problems the world was facing at this time into the movie. Powell wanted constant rewrites of the script, which would delay the project, and the film's budget would have to be reassessed. George Powell wanted to draw upon the success of science fiction films like 2001, A Space Odyssey, and Planet of the Apes, which were both box office hits in 1968. It wasn't just Logan's Run that Powell wanted to do, because he had many projects he wanted to make into a film. American International Pictures would even offer to buy Powell's many projects, which included Logan's Run, for about $200,000. But MGM would decline the offer and wanted $350,000 or more. George Powell would grow tired and leave the project, and went on to produce the film Doc Savage, The Man of Bronze, in 1975. Logan's Run would be handed over to producer Saul David, and he would take over the project in 1974. Initially, David would search for someone worthy to produce and take on the project. He would approach producer Irwin Allen, who was riding high on the success of films like The Poseidon Adventure and The Towering Inferno. He did decide to pick up the rights as one of his many options, but the rights of the novel Logan's Run would find its way back to Saul David. He eventually decided to adapt and produce the movie. He enlisted the author of Soylent Green, Stanley R. Greenberg, to write the script. However, Greenberg would leave the project. Greenberg had many ideas that would eventually find their way into the film. One of them was the idea of carousel, which became a big part of the movie. Greenberg was replaced by the co-writer of the controversial Straw Dogs, David Zelig Goodman. In his screenplay, he would make many changes to the story. One of these changes was raising the death age from 21 to 30. This would make it a lot easier to cast the film with older actors. The year was also changed to the year 2274. Respected director Michael Anderson, who originally co-directed The Dam Busters in 1955 and directed the blockbuster Around the World in 80 Days in 1956, was hired to direct, and he seemed to be the right man for the job.
I was screen tested and I met Michael Anderson. I was rather in awe when I first met him because I knew of this director who had directed The Dam Busters amongst many other films. And had a huge reputation. I mean, he was a fantastic director.
Anderson thought that it would be better if the character in the novel, Ballard/Francis, was dropped, so they broke up the character into two separate characters, changing Ballard into the old man, and Francis became a Sandman and best friend turned rival of Logan. For the casting process, their first choices for the two leads was Jon Voight as Logan and Lindsay Wagner as Jessica. English actor Michael York, who initially didn't think the movie was for him, was eventually cast in the role of Logan. English actress Jenny Agutter was best known for starring in The Railway Children in 1970 and Walkabout in 1971. William Devaney was cast as Sandman Francis in May of 1975. Unfortunately, Devaney would withdraw from the project to replace Roy Finnis in Alfred Hitchcock's Family Plot in 1976. He was replaced by actor Richard Jordan. Incidentally, Michael York and Richard Jordan and the director's son, Michael Anderson Jr., who played the Doc, were all over 30, unlike their characters, who were under 30 years old. Originally, the role of the old man was offered to James Cagney, but he turned it down. In September of 1975, it was announced Peter Ustinov would play the old man, a character who had no name and was billed only in the credits as Old Man.
When things were difficult and one wasn't finding work as easily as before, he suddenly came and suggested I should play the 100-year-old man in Logan's Run, which was a surprise for me. Slightly depressing because I turned up in Hollywood and I said to Mr. Westmore, one of the famous family of makeup men, I said, it's terrible, I've got to play a man of 100 years, it means I'll have to be at the studio 5 o'clock every morning to be made up. He said, no, I think 10 minutes will be enough. But he did it in 10 minutes by spraying all sorts of horrible substances onto my face.
Farrah Fawcett co-starred as Holly. She got the role after Michael York saw her when he was playing tennis and described her as a blonde vision of delight. So York suggested her to the casting director and she landed the role. At this time, Farrah Fawcett was a virtual unknown. However, her celebrity grew during the making of Logan's Run when she married Lee Majors. Fawcett was billed in the credits as Farrah Fawcett Majors. She would of course become the pin-up girl of the 70s after starring in the hit series Charlie's Angels. Roscoe Lee Brown was cast as the voice and the character Box the Robot. Logan's Run was one of the biggest productions in MGM history and one of the most expensive films ever made for the studio.
And this and other technical things were going on, costume designs, makeup, hair, the building of other sets and the choosing of locations. And the film started shooting, and again, it was incredible to be back in the saddle at MGM on the old Stage 30. In fact, at one point, Stage 30 was opened and joined with Stage 29 because Stage 30 wasn't big enough for the Ice Palace set which they built. So it took up 2 sets. And so it was on a scale and a magnitude that really was very, very lavish. And it felt incredible to have, again, all this great technical advice and these marvelous technicians at my disposal. And that was the way I made the film.
Logan's Run became the first film that would use Dolby Stereo on 70mm prints. The filmmakers also made great use of wide-angle lenses, which was not usually available. There were 9 sound stages used at MGM Studios in Culver City, California, and a miniature city was also constructed, and was among the largest of its kind built, though the model of the Dome City's interior lacked detail to make it look realistic on film. Many of the buildings in the foreground were 3 to 4 feet high. The buildings were built at differing scales based on their distance from the camera, to give the model landscape a greater sense of depth. These miniatures were also reused as the city in the movie The Ice Pirates in 1984. Footage that showed the Dome City landscape and maze car tunnel system were also used in the Season 4 Mork and Mindy episode, The Honeymoon, as the planet Orc, but the footage was tinted a different colour. The cityscape footage was reused by Paramount Pictures in Star Trek The Next Generation for the episode Tapestry. It can be seen in the background outside the windows of Picard's quarters. Producers saved $3 million by finding easily available locations in Dallas, buildings including the main interior shots were filmed in the Dallas Market Center, consisting of 6 modern structures. The waterfalls and steps Logan jumps into to get back into the dome are the active pool of the water gardens in Fort Worth, Texas. The ice cave sequence was filmed during a very hot summer in Los Angeles. The people frozen in the ice were extras who were spray painted white. For each take, extras had to stand perfectly still for many minutes at a time. Many of the ruined Washington, D.C. scenes of buildings were filmed on the old decrepit MGM backlot, which would eventually be bulldozed and destroyed. The pool used for the scenes where Logan and Jessica emerge when they re-enter the city is actually the famous Esther Williams tank at MGM. The Senate set, where the old man lives with his cats, was a reused set from the classic film Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Special effects artists L.B. Abbott and Glenn Robinson were hired by producer Saul David, and they would construct the carousel sequences, which was the most difficult and most complex effects of their time. A circular rig was constructed above the set and was designed to rotate in sync with the revolving floor plate below.
I remember Glenn Robinson coming in, we were shooting something else, and he said, there's a bit of an emergency. He said, all the wires are tangled up. And the fire brigade, studio fire brigade, had to come in with long ladders and unhook each and bring everyone down.
The rig was redesigned, so each stuntman had their own separate winch. All of the winches were connected to a kill switch, which Glenn Robinson was ready to press at any time.
It was a very complex scene, and Glenn was the master. He's a mechanical wizard.
For the interrogation scenes of Logan by the central computer, real hologram effects were used. They were considered state-of-the-art at that time. The Sandman's guns used tiny butane gas cartridges, but the guns were unreliable on camera because the gas would not always ignite when the trigger was pulled. Post-production would take 8 months to complete, as did the completion of the amazing futuristic-sounding score by Jerry Goldsmith. Logan's Run was previewed to a test audience before its release in Dallas. A few sequences were edited or shortened as a result. This included a longer sequence in the ice cave, where Box asked Logan and Jessica to pose for his ice sculpture. This scene was cut due to extensive nudity, so the film would receive a PG rating. Many other scenes were removed or trimmed from the film. These deleted scenes can be seen on the 1998 DVD release and can be found on YouTube if you search for it. Other deleted scenes were unfortunately lost. At the end of post-production, the budget had escalated from $3 million to a whopping $9 million, a very expensive film for 1976, and it was noted as being the most expensive MGM film made in 10 years, with most of the budget going to the sets. Logan's Run was a very big success in cinemas, and in its first 5 days grossed $2.5 million, which was a substantial sum for 1976. The film would also gross $26 million in its run. Marvel Comics would release a short-lived comic book series in 1977. The film received mixed reviews, some good, some bad. Logan's Run became a massive hit in cinemas and was so successful, in fact, that they paid Logan's Run author, Nolan, $9 million to base a television series on Logan's Run. The series starred Gregory Harrison and Heather Menzies as Logan and Jessica, but after debuting in 1977 on the CBS network, the series failed and didn't even last a season. Nolan would write 2 more novels. The second, Logan's World, dealt with Logan returning to Earth with survivors and ruins of the system he escaped in the first novel, while the third book, Logan's Search, deals with Logan going to an alternate reality with help from aliens to once again stop the government system that he escaped from in the first novel. Author George Clayton Johnson was rumoured to be developing a personal sequel to Logan's Run, which was going to be titled Jessica's Run. Sadly, Johnson died in 2015 before this sequel was fully realised. Interesting to note that for The Twilight Zone, Rod Serling wrote an episode called The Happy Place, which was very similar in tone to the original story for Logan's Run, and would describe a perfect society that executes people when they turn 60. The same themes were again explored in an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, titled Half a Life, about a society that required people to commit mandatory suicide at age 60, and anyone who refused this was branded a coward. In 1997, Warner Brothers, who now had the movie rights, was developing a remake to Logan's Run, which was a loyal re-adaptation of the source novel, which would star Leonardo DiCaprio, and the movie would revert back to the age of 21. The project was cancelled. In 2000, there were more talks to produce a movie, and again, in August of 2010, they were even saying that Ryan Gosling would star as Logan. As recent as 2018, Logan's Run has been a favourite of mine ever since I first saw it on TV back in the 80s. I think the effects were amazing for 1976, and you've got to remember, this was before Star Wars was even released. Michael Anderson does an incredible job making practical use of real-life locations, giving the film that futuristic look. Logan's Run has made a huge impact on popular culture. The film was also paid homage to in the comedy Free Enterprise, about two Trekkie friends who quote Logan's Run religiously as they are about to turn 30.
Get away from me!
It's too late for renewal, Mark. You're 30. Your life is over. You know it and I know it.
Well, please.
There is no sanctuary.
My name's Jonathan. Thanks for watching.